Again, hello, everybody. Today, we are thrilled. It is another Thursday CEASD workshop, and we get to learn so much. I hope everyone is thus far doing all right. I just wanted to begin by saying hello, just for a few seconds. So everybody show your video. Let's take a few seconds and greet each other. Hello there, everyone. All right. Okay, let's go back to hidden videos. Welcome, everyone. Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for doing that. It looks like we're all very savvy and using Zoom. If you have any questions, please feel free to pop up on video, ask your question, or put it in chat. My name is David Gieslin. I am the president of CEASD plus superintendent for the Indiana School for the Deaf. I'm going to start by introducing Barbara Raimondo. She is our executive director and will share a few statements and announcements in terms of the Deaf Education Summit. So we're going to give her a few minutes to explain that, and then we'll go to our presenters. Barbara? Hello, everyone. It's so great to see you all. I am happy to be here today, another Thursday, just like David said. I do want to talk a little bit about our Education and Advocacy Summit that's coming up the week of February 22nd through the 25th. Some of you, actually many of you, have already been involved and have flown out to Washington, D.C. just for that. And it is, of course, this year online, but there are several events. We have a Gallaudet visit, we have a youth workshop, an administrative workshop, Capital Education Advocacy Day, and that's my baby, I have to say. We will also have, very similar to other years, we will have a briefing, an online briefing, that you can establish appointments with your senators, congressmen, and we can help you out with some talking points, what to do during that appointment, and how to kind of prep. All you have to do is register, get the information that you need, and we'll go forth from there. We are currently now developing that we're growing in registrants right now, and I'm so grateful to see that. We do know that everyone is overwhelmed and zoomed out, so to speak. But I think it's so important that we continue to show up and be a presence and share our message about who we are in deaf education and how valued deaf students are. So please, please join us that week. I will be sending out an invitation again. Keep your eye out for that. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'm more than willing to chat with you. All right, well, thank you so much, Barbara, for sharing all of that. I do think it's so critical, and I highly recommend everyone get involved in that Deaf Education Summit. We've brought some kids in the past, and they have just had an eye-opening experience meeting legislators and senators, congressmen, and it's an unforgettable moment for them. Plus, we visited several museums around the Capitol Mall. What a rich experience for students, for ourselves. And it was, we visited the African American History Museum. It was phenomenal. But I also want to go back to the point in case today. I want to thank Gallaudet University for providing us the 3 presenters and for several presentations and Zoom meetings throughout this year. I do want to introduce Deborah Chin Pinchler, who is a professor of linguistics. And then we have Sharon Pajka, who works with language acquisition with a variety of populations and people. And all of these presenters love technology. And then we also have Daniel Lundberg, Dr. Lundberg, who is such a wonderful professor of chemistry, biology, and physics, and is the leader for those programs. Who he teaches the science and the history of beer and alcohol in one of his courses, which is so fascinating, good to know. But they provide a variety of different courses. And as I said, Dr. Sharon Pashka, who is a professor at Gallaudet University in English and is an online certified professor. She focuses mainly in youth language and literacy, overall focusing mainly on global literacy. And just, I mean, she has so many stories, and she even gets into stories of monsters and paranormal. It's interesting and fascinating. But I hope you all are very excited to see their presentation. Thank you very much for being here with us today, you three. And I'm going to pass the floor over to you.
Okay, I'm just testing it to make sure I can share my screen with you all. Okay, it's looking good. So I'm starting the panel today with you all, and I'm going to talk about teaching with technology now during COVID. First of all, I'd like to say how much I appreciate Gallaudet giving us so much support throughout this time. When March 2020 happened and we realized how quickly we had to convert from everything we were doing face-to-face to being remote for our instruction, it took us about a week to really convert everything over. We had tremendous support, very clear communication about everything that was happening. And the technology was very helpful. Also, of course, we had iPad Pros made available to us. I think Deb is going to be showing that. And so that training really helped us. We also had trauma-informed training, diversity training, and a lot of technology training. We do use a bilingual approach as well, so we had training on that. There were so many benefits from the support the university gave us, and faculty members, each of us, had to work through our courses to convert them to be online. Today, the panel will be talking about our approaches to collaboration, how we support engagement, and encourage students to really be a part of these courses online and continue to use our bilingual approach for instruction. The three basic goals for today will be to talk about how our face-to-face assignments and activities can be adjusted to make them more available online, how we encourage working together with our students to be collaborative and also facilitate opportunities for socialization and working with each other, and how we approach instruction, our instructional philosophy, and how that applies to our technology and the skills we use from that. Okay, so I will jump right in. I'm Dr. Sharon Pashka, and I am the coordinator here. I work in the English department. I am working as well as teaching online, and I do a lot of work with our self-advocacy program. When I'm thinking about my experience with the conversion from making my courses available online, I am going to be talking about my literature class. I have a freshman literature class that I'm teaching. I also teach advanced classes as well. I'll be talking about a few of those today. So first of all, what works? The importance of course structure is something I'd like to talk about. I'll talk about student choice as well and how to really engage your students. I also will share some research findings and some technology tools that have really been beneficial for me and for the students I work with. I'll give you a moment to read the slide. Go back just for a moment to talk about the course structure. it's important to think about how we are experiencing when we were teaching face-to-face instruction versus remote instruction and how different they are. So maybe we did the training online, but that doesn't mean that our students are prepared for what they need for that. So the structure is really important. Establishing that structure for the course is usually happening through Blackboard. In Blackboard Ultra, we set up the course and you can have a number of folders. For my freshmen, I set it up with weekly folders so that they could see that, and that seemed to work as a structure. I set it up with themes for the more advanced students. That allowed the students to see what each folder had with content related to that theme, if there was a particular time period, if we were talking about American foundations, for example, if we were talking about colonial or realism or different time periods. That way, each time the students went into Blackboard and saw the folder, it would prompt them to remember the different time periods as well. Whether you're using a weekly structure or a thematic structure, there's not a right or wrong. It's just considering different options for a consistent structure that's established for the course. Student choice is also very important. Here at the university, we have to be flexible, so giving them choices is a way to do that. We do have common readings for our students, but we also allow them to choose additional books for reading that they'd like to select. One of the things that really changes with going to a remote instruction is that the students are not bringing everything with them, so they don't have all of the materials in a common place. That can be a challenge. I'll talk a little bit later about some of the apps that we have used, and some of those books are free. Everything that we're doing is really focused on engagement. That's our priority. I really wanted to make sure that the students felt a part of the class and of their education. Even if it took us that whole week to make everything accommodated for an online platform, I wanted to make sure that the course itself stayed engaging, was a fun learning experience for them, and created a safe place. Go back to my slide here. So this is talking about workload. So this researcher that you'll see on the slide, Betsy Barr, was looking at workload. And one of the things that she realized is that the collective load, which includes cognitive load, which really looks at how much students are taking on their plate, how much they're accepting right now, which can cumulatively be very overwhelming. Maybe there's things that they thought they were already able to handle, but doing it remote. Maybe the content isn't different, but the experience itself is. How are they setting up the technology? How are they accessing the course? Some of those things are really challenging for our students. Betsy's research looked at how sometimes people feel that things are harder in this environment. It might be the same general activity as it was face-to-face, but the responsibility and what that looks like in an online platform actually demands a lot more. So rather than having one large assignment, making it more palatable in smaller chunks, making it more digestible, that can be really helpful. Then they also have those assignments they can work on throughout to give the attention to that focused assignment, to have clear deadlines, and that can help with managing the cognitive load and help them to be less overwhelmed. We know that sometimes students come to class and they haven't done the reading, or they're not prepared with their homework. In face-to-face, some of those students can still engage and participate with their peers. Now, however, it's more obvious which students are coming to the digital class not prepared. They can't fake it in the same way they could in person. In face-to-face courses, there's an easier way for them to participate, or at least present like they're on top of things, but that participation looks really different, and again, adds to their cognitive load online. In the slides, you'll see that there are two different links These are things that I will share as well in the PowerPoint that you can click on. The researcher realized that we couldn't accurately guess how long tasks took. For example, if we were reading something really boring, it felt like it was taking forever, even if it wasn't. If there was something we really enjoyed, time just flew by and it felt really short. But we weren't accurately gauging how long amount of time we were spending on different activities. Maybe we thought 20 minutes is an appropriate length of time for that assignment, but it's actually taking students 2 to 3 hours. So it's a nice tool to help us recalibrate, to allow us to feed in information like page numbers, if there's something that is more difficult to read, if there's a writing assignment we have to be mindful of, then we can see the approximate amount of time that that particular task requires. So we found that a really helpful tool. The other thing that this researcher mentioned was that part of everything that's happening right now with the work feeling harder and the cognitive load, a lot of that also comes from the trauma of this experience. People are at home alone, experiencing a lot more isolation. And we expect, if we look ahead 5 years, that this time period will be impacting people, that we'll still be seeing the remnants of that. And 5 years from now, we can't exactly predict or measure that. But for these students, the trauma of this experience is having an effect on their everyday life. The link that I'm included in the PowerPoint also talks about some strategies to incorporate with your teaching for students, keeping the trauma component in mind. I do set up an introduction with how to be respectful of each other. I think it's important that we set a community of respect so that students feel that the classroom is a safe place, that the course is designed for them and their participation. If students don't feel safe, they won't engage. And then if they're not engaged, we can't meet our students' outcome goals. So it's important to emphasize language use. We talked about being a bilingual university, and we see a range of language skills among our students. We want to respect where our students are coming in. Some are newer learners of American Sign Language. Some students do not have fluent competency in English. So looking at the variety of language use and competency for our students. How do we really encourage students and facilitate their involvement while also respecting their privacy? It doesn't have to be what happens in the classroom stays in the classroom, the way that we talk about Las Vegas, for example, but we want to appreciate that if information is shared with us, that we be mindful of how we share that information with others and really keep it private when that's how it's intended within the classroom space. One activity I do with my class, and this is specifically for the advanced literature students, is create a community quilt. So this is something that I've used in face-to-face classes as well, in the classroom, where we actually have individual quilt squares for each student. And we create a quilt by connecting them all. So we were able to do that physically when we were in person. Now that we're remote, it's hard to know how to still incorporate that activity, but I'll talk about what we've done. I give students the option to hand draw something or use a digital tool to draw something, whatever works for them. It's mostly about connecting with their identity, pieces of themselves they want to share, how to develop a sense of trust with each other. And there are a couple of articles, or an article and a story rather, that really help with this. In talking about building the quilt, we think about American culture and the long history we have of valuing quilts, their role in our culture, how we use them to tell stories, how each square really is significant in its own component or chapter of the story. It's also a way of taking the words off, but keeping the meaning and significance. So from this semester, it's not a completed quilt yet, but one of the things that I'm working on with my students is they use their iPad, and there are 2 different apps. They don't have to be limited by these 2. There are other options, but we primarily focus on these 2. One is Procure. It's an Adobe Illustrator app. I'm not an artist, but I do think it's a fun way to reflect on the drawing process, the creative process. What parts of myself do I want to share with the rest of the class? So allowing for that creative opportunity in thinking about their quilt square, what is it going to look like? How is it going to represent me? Maybe it's something about themselves or their identity, because there are many different layers to our identities as well. What we emphasize is it's not the product, the quilt itself, it's the process of working together, exploring ourselves, the introspection, making something that is visual, the activities of piecing them together as a class. So it is a fun way for us to work together and also to build those relationships within the class. I mentioned this before, that we do have a few apps that we have found really successful. For students studying literature, we encourage them to look at Hoopla. There's a lot of instruction that we're trying to be mindful of in terms of components that are missed remotely. They can't just come into the office and see all the titles on your shelf and pick the ones that are interesting to them. So how do we replace that? If we have a library card, if the student already has access to a library, they can get into Hoopla. So Gallaudet does have that as an option for Hoopla. They get onto it through their iPad. They just connect with their library code once the app is downloaded. And I really encourage them to have a library card, even if they don't already have one, but they can have access to a number of free ebooks with that access. The next one is called Project Gutenberg. And this is an app that's free. You can check it out online. There are 60,000 free ebooks available through that site. Some of them are older titles, which is great for English majors. But there are also some books that are more rare and harder to find. So it's a nice collection. The final app that I wanted to mention is called Grammarly. It is also free unless you do the professional level one where you pay. And I do recommend the professional level to all of my students. Everyone on Gallaudet's campus has that access. It's a really nice app to allow students, whether they're professional writers or students, to learn about grammar. It teaches you about grammar and the writing process. It's a really helpful writing tool. So each of these apps I've found really beneficial. I'm going to turn it over to the next presenter, and he'll be sharing his video.
Well, hello, everyone. I am Dr. Daniel Lundberg. I'm a professor here at Gallaudet University and a program director for both the chemistry program and biology, the biology program and chemistry and physics program. So what exactly I'll be sharing today is talking about a flipped classroom, what's pre-recorded and then what we can do in a Zoom classroom. And once we're in the Zoom classroom, how to manage that. And the third thing is talking about laboratory courses, gateway courses versus advanced. And those, how do we provide those hands-on experiential learning opportunities while doing remote learning? Rationales for flipping the classroom, first of all, is internet connectivity. It is fluctuating at the best of times. One moment, the interpreter is having a hard time with the choppiness of the video. Another rationale is just students need to be able to see each other very clearly. And with internet connectivity, things can be very choppy, and sometimes learning does not occur. So that is one of our top reasons for flipping a classroom. We don't necessarily want to waste time in just classroom lecture. Okay. This is David. I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt really quick. Excuse me. The video, unfortunately, keeps freezing. So maybe we can turn off share screen and just, okay. Well, this is, okay, let's see what the speed looks like now. Is this better? So yes, much better, much, much better. All right, live presentation it is, everyone. Here we go. All right, I did not prepare for this, so this will be an improvisation of what I know. Okay, let's see here. All right, I think we're good. I just want to make sure everyone can see my PowerPoint slide. Okay. All right. Well, it's great to see you again, Sharon. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, as we were talking about internet connectivity, not so great with YouTube. It seems to be all right with a live presentation. It may fluctuate, however, because cellular sight lines here where I'm at are not always great with the clouds in the sky. So we'll see how it goes. All right. So we were talking about rationale for flipped classrooms. And we talked about the internet connectivity and how students really need that face-to-face experience, the use of their language, ASL, and then just making sure that we have good study materials, how the class is organized and structured in Zoom, and how you can then do those last minute adjustments with internet connectivity. When it happens, if you don't have a plan in place, students become very lost in the instruction. And so I use a lot of YouTube links to pre-recorded video sessions of my lessons. I tried another program and software. It did not seem to work very well. We did unlisted links for YouTube, and that was more efficient. Now, talking about students using Blackboard, that is what we use for our classes here. However, if you need to know where to find everything, I'm able to place it where I want it. But if students have no idea where it's at, they again become very lost. So we have to make sure everything is very clear and succinct, consistent for our classes so that our students know what's going on. We do a lot of announcements or news updates, informing students of things going on around campus in the class. So it's a very predictable structure. I structure my classes based on weeks. And we have a starting week folder with all of the information regarding rubrics, grading expectations, and so forth. I also do a scavenger hunt quiz after the first week to make sure students are familiarizing themselves with Blackboard. I will also do a lot of snapshots of their assignments or screenshots of their assignments and make sure I post those so that they know what it looks like and what they're looking for. Now, I also teach a course in pharmacology, and I'm always preparing a to-do list. I don't necessarily use a syllabus, it's not graded, but there is a to-do list, which is going to be a critical component every week. And I always pin that at the top of the blackboard so that students are able to see that very quickly. We pin which pharmacological drug we're going to be talking about for the week or which one they need to research and add to the list. We get the assignment submitted, and then I noticed that a few students hadn't really been emailing me or informing me of their drug of choice that they wanted to research. So even at the end of Zoom class, I was able to then have a private one-on-one conversation with the students, and they admitted that they didn't know where to find the information. So I helped them navigate through Blackboard in order to find it. But here is what the folder looks like in Blackboard. Hopefully you can see that icon and what it looks like. Right under that is review of chapters 1 through 10, and that's for our general chemistry 2 class. Chemistry is for those in a science major. They oftentimes also have to review prior semester classes that they've taken, so we do provide links and short summary videos in ASL of those reviews. Once you get into week 2, then we have a list of all of the things needed for that week. You know, oftentimes in a syllabus, students are like, well, they're asking questions. I'm like, it's in the syllabus. That's typically what professors are saying. But every time they ask a question, if it can be found in the syllabus, I actually make a bet saying, all right, now you owe me $1 because you must not have read the syllabus. But anyways, I still insert common rules of thumb, what they need to know first, pinned in the top of that video, are pinned at the top of the folder in Blackboard. I also include PowerPoint slides in my presentations that they can review on their own time. The process and steps needed to take to answer any questions that are posed to them for the class. Okay, oh no, I just got a message. Let's see here, it seems we have, so I can see my slides just fine. However, it seems that Jeff is saying we are unable to see the PowerPoint. Seems like you presented the slide, but what we're seeing is not changing. So did you click slideshow? Okay, I'm going to share it again. Yes, that's much better. Yeah. Okay. Importance of bilingualism. Okay, that's a good, all right, there we go. Thank you for making that adjustment. Sure, yeah, anytime. I'm sorry. I'll go ahead and just start off right here. Hopefully that's clear. Okay, well, that's Zoom. You have to just have that last minute adjustment as needed. Okay, so again, this is the folder, what the folder looks like for week 2. Just talking about all of the different things that we put in there in the list of instructions. As you can see here, we have reminders, what they need to do before class at the beginning of that week. Typically, classes are Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so I do have students watch part 1 of the instruction before class on Tuesday so that our Tuesday Zoom meeting can be more student discussion. We then upload questions for the students to answer after class discussions. Before Thursday's class, they have to watch part 2 of the instruction, and we have the same process going through. I may have a quiz at the very beginning of class, the first 10 minutes of class during those Thursday classes. And then we give them a heads up for what's coming up in the next week. That way students have that consistency. And instead of wavering on, have I done this or have I not, they're able to follow a very succinct to-do list. Now, I'm going to hit on the importance of bilingualism, which is so critical. If you're going to have PowerPoint slides or text and books, it, that's great, but I think it's so important to include ASL in the information. If it's just a PowerPoint, if I am signing the instruction, then that's great. I'm right next to the PowerPoint on their screens. But sometimes I actually take off my video so that I can then present a whiteboard so that I can show them the process of solving a problem or an equation. In class, sometimes I have to turn around to write on the whiteboard and then turn back around to present my ASL instruction. What's nice about that is I can still do that on Zoom. So in the video, you would have seen this happening. You would have seen my video to one side and the PowerPoint slide on the other, and you're able to do that in Zoom. What's nice about this, it includes a timestamp. I think at first, in today's culture, students tend to prefer short videos like 5 minutes or less. If it's a 10-minute video, they're not crazy about it or they feel overwhelmed. So what I do is I have part one, and there's different timestamps that I will emphasize within the lecture. So when I provide a review, students have already watched part one, but if they need more practice with, let's say, the first order of elements, and so I'm able to provide them that timestamp in their Blackboard folders so that they can review that particular section and not have to watch the whole video again. Now, let me go back to talk about Zoom. So if you remember, just a strict lecture in Zoom. Okay, Jeff asked me about whiteboard technology. I actually use my Surface Pro, and it helps me and able to screen share and do a whiteboard projection in my class. So, and yes, I know some students will not watch a video. Someone asked about a part one, part two video. I do have some students that I'm sure are not watching all of the videos. But at the very beginning of class, I always ask, are there any questions about what you watched? Any discussion points you want clarification on? And so it's a nice way to involve students and have that engagement. And then when there's time left, I look back and I upload questions into the chat box that students can then discuss. And then I can go through and explain or clarify anything as needed. Okay, so here is a sample of a Zoom question that I will use. And I just realized something. So in a smaller class, student involvement and interactive classes are wonderful. If you have a larger class size, you might need to use the breakout room feature of Zoom. So if you see here, there's a question that is highlighted in yellow. And then number 6 says, what is the difference between the rate of law and integrated rate law? And so that is the question posed to them. We have referenced some helpful material. This is also used as a study guide as needed. And then question 7, I actually used a screen share when we're in the Zoom class. I'll screen share a particular question. We'll have a discussion regarding that. And then if you can see here as the example, I have the table and it says see page 432, table 12.6, or a particular slide. Then they have to go to that. And now you can see the image I've posted here where there's certain things in this column that they may need to go and find. And so what they can do is they can find what we're talking about, another topic that I have mentioned, and then they can find the exact formula they need to use in order to solve an equation. Now, okay, let's just say this. Doing virtual laboratory courses are very difficult. You have a science lab in person has ventilation hoods. We use certain chemicals. We use Bunsen burners and so forth. But how can we provide hands-on experiential learning when they're not here on campus or in the labs? They may be home. We investigated the possibility of sending kits to students' home. However, those were quite pricey, and the expense was not going to be feasible. So it could be that we tried to purchase certain things that we needed for a 2-week time frame, and then we would create a laboratory care package. However, the kits did not include glassware. It was only types of science equipment that could be used with regular household products or regular non-hazardous chemicals. So we had to really learn how to do interactive laboratory activities online. Then for our advanced courses, we had to do a laboratory coordinator as an avatar, which I'll explain a little bit later about that. But first, let me show you what the general chemistry kit looked like. You can see in there a thermometer. You can see measuring cups, was similar to kitchen measuring cups. You see a jar, sort of, everything is safe, non-hazardous for the students to use. They include coffee filters. And so we try to come up with experiments that use these things that they can do at home in the kitchen. So we have goggles, we have aprons, and they'll send us images of them doing some of these things. And it's great fun to see. So we do as best as we can with home experiments. But about 2/3 of the students really do prefer the online interactive activities that we use. Now, going back to the advanced courses, in terms of instrumentation housed at Gallaudet, I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. Obviously, that is not mobile equipment. You cannot take those things home. And so we decided to use the avatar concept, meaning a person there at the Gallaudet lab will be using Zoom. We'll have 2 cameras established, one for the instrumentation, and then one for the particular person that's going to be operating all of this stuff. And so we do have a standard of operation explaining how to use the equipment, how to do the experiment, how to do concrete calculations, how to use certain solutions, the correct terminology, the correct scientific method procedures. And so for about a week before the lab, we make sure all of that is down pat and students are familiar with it. For the first 15 minutes of an avatar laboratory class, we make sure everyone's on the same page, and then we connect with our laboratory coordinator. Now, it's not commanding the avatar what to do, but it is sort of giving steps of what to do. And as part of that instruction, the avatar, they use the Socratic method and start pulling out information from the students to make sure that we're all on the right path and doing the correct method. Now, nothing beats an on-campus experience, especially for science lab classes. However, this is a wonderful alternative for virtual learning. It's a way to still, in effect, use instrumentation that's there in the lab. That is it for my part of the presentation. So I'm now going to send it over to my colleague, Deb. The floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Let me get a moment here to share my screen. Okay. All right. So to introduce myself, I'm Dr. Deborah Chen Pitcher, and I work here at Gallaudet. My light is not working out here. Give me a moment. Okay. So my focus is going to be particularly on the tools that I use related to whiteboard activities. As professors, I use whiteboard regularly. Many of you might as well. But I would like to try and keep that at home. So how I've been able to make that function with different materials at home. I teach a number of courses, but the one that I use the whiteboard for the most that I'll be talking about is my syntax classes. Whether we're looking at sign language classes, sign languages, or spoken languages, I do talk about these things a lot using the whiteboard in my syntax classes. We're doing a lot with different linguistics trees to try and talk about the languages. If it's French or any number of languages, we do a lot of comparison drawing these trees to show the structure. Now remotely, I'd like to continue doing this. And since I'm drawing as well as expecting that the students are drawing these trees, I want to be thinking about something that is cost effective, something that's time effective and won't require a lot of work. I know that it was already mentioned that we only had that 1 week to convert everything from in-person to an online course. So trying to think of something that can really be effective for that 1 week we had to convert everything. If there was something that required a lot of work, we didn't have the time to be able to do that. Fortunately, Gallaudet University did provide iPads, and the iPad Pros were available, as well as Apple Pencils. That was a lifesaver, so I'm so grateful for that. Especially for a course like my syntax class, which requires so much interaction and drawing. I did compare a couple different programs and used the summertime to research several different options, and I'll talk a little bit about them. Google Slides is something that I use on a regular basis, but trying to use Google Slide as a projection you can interact with wasn't really compatible with what I needed. I also considered Keynote and PowerPoint, and they did have some features we could do in terms of drawing on it, but it took a lot of effort to make sure that I could convert everything in the slide to allow for that. I also considered different whiteboard apps. There are a number of them available. While there are some that are very nice, they're also very costly. We couldn't afford to just spend all of the money on a whiteboard app or expect the students to be able to do that themselves. Zoom also has its own feature for a whiteboard built in. It allows for showing that to all of the students. They can use the whiteboard tool, but it doesn't have the flexibility that I need. It just has one whiteboard, but you can't interact with both the slide and the whiteboard in the way that I needed it to. Finally, I tried out Google Jamboard, and this was the winner. It checked all the boxes. I started familiarizing myself with the program and actually was surprised that this was something that's already included when you have the G Suite. Everything that comes with Google includes the Jamboard. I wasn't aware of that up until this point, but I'll show you a brief demonstration of how that works. The Google Jamboard is collaborative. It's a collaborative whiteboard. What this looks like is I would start on my iPad and draw something, and the students would see what I'm drawing on their own iPads. They could also draw themselves. So if they're drawing, I would see that on my iPad as well. All of that happens in real time. The nice thing is that if you're in your Gmail and you're opening up to see all of the other Google apps that are available, you'll see the icon for Jamboard, this little yellow icon right there with everything else. You just click on it and open it up. You can change the backgrounds if you want something other than the plain white background, so there's different features available to customize. I've used the Jamboard in class. I've also used it if I'm doing a pre-recorded lecture. I can interact with the Jamboard and draw things as part of my lecture. I can be writing on it and referencing it in the video I'm recording. If I need to emphasize something or circle something in the structure that I'm drawing out, I can do that. And I can also include a list of things as part of that slide. It allows for pictures and objects and a number of things to be inserted into the slide as part of the Jamboard. The best way that I've been able to utilize it so far is having Jamboard overlapping with breakout rooms. That's definitely something I like to incorporate in my teaching. Sometimes for them to get that hands-on experience, breaking them up into groups is helpful. So if I set up the Jamboard ahead of time and have a number of different breakout groups, I can have up to 20 pages. So if I tell the students to break up into pairs with their partner, they pick one page, And then they practice doing these kind of syntax trees within their breakout groups. It's nice because I can then see all of the Jamboards that are being worked on and jump into a group, let's say group 3, if I want to pop into their group and see what they're doing. Maybe their syntax tree is coming along nicely. Maybe there's a mistake. If there's something that I want to give them feedback on, I can pop into the group, see what they're doing, give them that feedback. I can do it in ASL, and I can be in any number of breakout rooms over the course of the class. The other thing that's nice is everyone is seeing the same whiteboard. So if I'm interacting with it, it'll show up on what the students are doing. So that real-time interaction is still able to happen online. That's been a really helpful feature. Once class is over, the Jamboards are all filled out for every breakout pair of students. So I can save it as a PDF. They can have it on their file. I can reset the screen and it's blank and ready for the next day. One of the other things that I like to do in the class is I have Tuesday lectures and Thursday labs. Lab for me usually means more of an activity class. Sometimes we're doing a worksheet or a slide or something else in that class. Let's say we're interacting with a map. If I want to have different pictures in different parts of the map and have it be interactive, once I've set the Jamboard up with the pictures and everything else, I can use a screenshot or picture of that to send out. Once it becomes the background, it's frozen. So if I take that picture as a background, I can send it out to everyone in the class for them to use as lab. Once the lab begins, they go into the Jamboard. Each group picks one of these, and then whatever the background was, that picture that I chose is frozen and their interaction goes on top of that. If there's something wrong, they can erase it, but they can interact with it like they normally would, but the background is the picture I selected instead of something plain and white. That's definitely a way that I've used this Jamboard, but you can use it in other subject areas, math or fill in the blanks. It's interesting to think about how many other alternatives there are in a remote platform. So Jamboard has been really helpful for me. Again, it's nice to see the work that the students are doing, and as a professor, be able to see that in real time. I can give feedback, I can participate with students in the breakout rooms, all at the same time. It looks like we do have a couple of minutes left, so maybe I'll show a little demonstration of this. If you're going in from Gmail, as I mentioned, in the top corner, you can select the Jamboard app. It's that yellow J icon in the list of Google apps. Once I'm in there, I can see all of the Jamboards I've created. You can choose different backgrounds. Here, for example, is a worksheet that I created for students. One of the things that's nice about this is it doesn't have the same lag time that the Zoom whiteboard has. They do have a whiteboard, but there's an interaction with the whiteboard and then a delay while you wait for that to register in the system. Jamboard is instantaneous. I've found that it runs very smoothly. In terms of the background options, there's several to choose from. The iPad app does have some limitations rather than using it on the computer where you have a lot more function availability. If I'm going to do something like saving a picture as a background, I'll do that from a computer rather than the iPad. If there's something that I am just doing a graph for or something else, then it's nice to have the backgrounds available. I do often start my class development for different worksheets and things on the computer though, since the iPad is limited. Apparently Jamboard has been around for a while, but I didn't learn about it until just this year. If you're curious to get more information about it, I would suggest these 3 resources. I did actually make a demo of Jamboard for use at Gallaudet. There's also the Getting Started, which is from Jamboard themselves. Google created that. Google does actually also sell Jamboards, physical boards that have wheels, so they're mobile, but they're around $5,000 or something each, so they're very expensive. I looked at the video though, so it's nice to know that that's an option that's available. I'm happy with what's available through the app, and that's also free. I don't have as much to share about the third resource. I don't actually use screen share very often. It ends up feeling a little bit difficult with the visibility, but there is a way to do this with broadcast instead of screen share. So then you can actually change the settings for what's visible and be able to focus more specifically on what you want the students to see. So that's the third option, to do this broadcast rather than screen sharing. Thank you so much for allowing us to be here today. I'll invite Dr. Pashka and Dr. Lundberg back on screen. I guess this is an opportunity for anyone that has questions.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much, the 3 of you, for this presentation. That was a lot of information, and we've learned quite a bit. Now, good news is that principals, superintendents, and supervisors, curriculum directors, you can all now share this information with your teachers. This presentation has been recorded. We will send that out to all of you by next week, I would say. I do want to appreciate and show gratitude to Gallaudet University for providing us with all of these resources and the information. But I want to open the floor up to any questions that you may have for our 3 presenters today. This was an amazing topic. We've learned a lot. I really enjoyed the timestamp video study guide and Jamboard. Those were very interesting. And we are here to really serve our students, and that's what this is all about. And so we're just going to take a moment and see if there are any questions out there.
I just want to pop in here as well and say hello. And thank all of our participants in the panel today. Having each of your expertise on technology is so useful for us. The Jamboard in particular is very new for me.
Same here.
I'm curious about the avatar and how exactly that works. Can you talk a little bit more about that, or if there's any other technology that would be working in a similar way?
Sure, Jeff. For the avatar courses, really it's more for the lab coordinator who is physically at Gallaudet 2 to 3 times during the week. Because of social distancing and the limited number of people allowed, they are able to go through the COVID screening, get approval to be on campus, and they're there with all of the solutions and chemicals, getting them ready. My students, however, will do the calculations, do the right steps as if they were in the lab. And the avatar, the lab coordinator, is the one that then does the action with the solutions and chemicals. I think the first time we did that and I let it just kind of flow as normal, Megan, who is our avatar, was just stuck, did not do anything because the students were sending out so many different commands or different information. And so we had to actually kind of take a moment and pause and discuss how we want to do this. And so the avatar became a little more hands off at first, and then the students had to learn the process because students may have inadvertently given wrong information or the wrong type of information to the avatar. And so that's where Megan used that Socratic method in order to pull the correct information so that the experiment could then virtually happen. And that's why we have the 2 device cameras to show it all.
So what I'm understanding is that your description right now makes it sound like it's actually a lot more easy to use.
It is. that's a great application to use for any CTE programs. Any courses is bringing in an avatar. So that's interesting. Any other questions out there from our participants? I think everyone is just a little bit awestruck, jaw drops to the floor, and just all of this and the different technologies that are available now. Times have certainly changed in today's world. If there are no more questions, I do want to just again thank you all so much for your presentation and thank the interpreters. We want to thank Texas School for the Deaf for providing us with Kat Northup, and then the Pennsylvania School for the Deaf for providing us with, oh gosh, I forgot her name. Her name's Amanda, David. Hold on,
Amanda.
look it up. There we go. Amanda Moyer. There we are. Amanda Moyer. Thank you guys so much. I hope you have a wonderful day. Stay safe. And don't forget who all this is for. It's for our students. All right. Thanks for having us. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye. Okay, everybody pop up. Say their byes.